How is everyone today? Still trying to figure all this out. I think I finally invited Lorenzo.
Ciao,
Ciao!
Hamilton.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I
Sure, it's a
appreciate it.
pleasure.
A
How
pleasure's
are
all
you?
mine. How's the weather there?
It's very sunny today, so it's actually pretty hot in the
Yeah,
vineyards.
that's awesome. That's great to
Yes.
hear. It's raining here, so perfect day for some Barolo.
Well, here it's sunny, but actually I'm still drinking Barolo. Sunny and warm. If you
Ah,
chill it,
so I'm not alone.
what are you drinking?
So, of course, Azelia, but let's see if the label, there we go, the 2015 San
Oh,
Rocco.
sun.
And pardon the pronunciations. I know Maria, our mutual friend, said that I'm probably going to butcher everything and wished me luck. So,
Ciao,
but
Maria.
very excited because, as you know, I am a huge fan of your wines. My passion, my love for wine came to be with Barolo, came to be with Nebbiolo, and when I finally came across your wines, it was a couple years after that. Um, it really just all clicked. There's so many different ways to make Barolo, and to have an innovator like yourself, it's amazing. Yourself and your family, and I think the biggest thing that people who are tuning in, it's important to note. Yes, Barolo is the town. The grape is Nebbiolo. Just the little background to it. And we're talking northwestern Italy in Piemonte. But there's so much to be done there, and there's so many ways to make it. And your family, I mean, what, 1920? We'll give a quick history. Started the domain, the house, 200 or 100 years now. Um, Tell me a little bit more about you and your family.
Well, before starting, I have a note to the audience because yesterday I have to tell you that Hamilton told me that he has 2 pages of questions. So you have to be ready.
This is
I don't
true.
know the
This is
questions,
true.
so we'll see what happens.
Well, yep,
Oh,
the craziness. But I will be. I'll cut to the point and cut to the chase. Um, but we'll get to it. I think it's really neat, for myself to understand that there's so much history, 5 generations, 100 years. Yet at the same token, you guys are flying under the radar. You're smaller production for some of the houses, and most people know your cousins, but they don't know you. And it's unfortunate, but it means that the wines are more available for wine lovers like myself. But little by little, I have no doubt that the cat will be out of the bag, as they say here in the States. Um, and that innovation goes way back. Talk about, I mean, your father. That's why I picked the wine that I did. Um, how did San Rocco come to be, if you don't mind telling me? Again.
well, San Rocco, there's a special history behind the vineyard, behind San Rocco, because our winery is based in Castiglione Falletto. That's where we have our historical vineyard, Bricco Fiasco. San Rocco comes from another village, which is Serralunga l'Alba. And when my father was able to find this small plot of land on sale, it was in the early 90s. Back then, it was very unusual to invest in land outside of your native commune. Nobody used to do that. So you were just buying in your small village because it was common. But my father has always been in love with Barolos from Serralunga d'Alba because of the structure which they have, because of the minerality, the sapidity. It's a very particular style of Barolo, so I really wanted to have some holdings there. So he was able to find this small plot on sale, and he decided to rent it without telling my grandfather. And because back then still even renting it was a huge investment,
Mhm.
so he was a bit scared to confess this to his father. So it was a bit hard to hide a vineyard because he had to farm this vineyard, so he was driving up to Serralunga d'Alba every single day. And after a while, my grandfather was like, "What are you doing in Serralunga d'Alba every day?" And so he had to tell him. At first, my grandfather was very disappointed, very mad at him because, you know, so much money, even more so back then. So at first, he was very disappointed. But after tasting the first harvest, the first wine, he was extremely satisfied because the result was outstanding. So after that, he was
I
very,
believe
very happy
the
with
term, the phrase is minchia, fuck.
the Esatto, yes. But after that, he was very, very happy with my dad's decision. So that's how it started. That's how we started working with vineyards in Serralunga d'Alba. Yes. San Rocco, my
That's
father was
awesome.
able
And
to buy it a few years later, and the first vintage was 95.
okay. And key to note, this was just after the 80s. And the 80s were a very big time in Barolo in terms of progression and in terms of winemaking techniques and really putting Barolo on the map. Most of the wines were made to age, made to drink 20, 30 years, decades after they were produced. And your family, extended family, your family were very close to bringing barriques, utilizing things like roto fermenters, and taking the risks necessary. But I think what's beautiful about the San Rocco is it has, so you mentioned Castiglione Folletto, where you're located, and that's right between the two soil types, the Tortonian and the Serravallian soil, or the Helvetian. And the soil type that San Rocco gives you, it gives you the energy, it gives you the power and the finesse. But at the same token, it needs different treatment. So this San Rocco that you produced, the 2015 beautiful ripe vintage, it's able to drink because the élevage was in a bit, at least in barrique, correct? Yet that being said, you are so well versed when it comes to winemaking. You produce my personal favorite, which I have the 2015 for my elder son for his birth year, the Brico Fiasco, which is the hill that you share with your cousins. And that uses larger, medium-sized oak, correct? So just having that in tune and being able to produce these wines so beautifully and so spot on is tremendous. And I'll digress, you know that, I always do. The side note that is key to me, I worked in restaurants for over a decade, and it was always interesting to try and tell people, hey, this is Barolo, it's beautiful, let me open it 8 hours before you come to the restaurant so that you can enjoy it, make sure to give me a call. It's not that easy, no one really does that. And your wines, especially your Barolo, I mean the 16 that I had the pleasure of tasting with you in March, early March, it's just so fresh and so ready to drink when you open it. Yet you do have these deep and brooding wines, and despite this only being 5 years old, it's got so much complexity and it's so ready to go. And I think that's very, very key to note, the diversity that you have. But you're also not looking to expand. I remember the conversation we had.
It's
You have
enough.
Charetta.
It's enough.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Well,
Because
prices
it's
in
you and your father,
Barolo.
correct?
I'm sorry.
It's you and your father doing most of the work. It's still a family-run operation.
My mother as well. Yes,
I,
all the
I
family is
saw the
involved.
big,
Of course, we have many workers helping us both in the vineyards and in the winery, but there's always a family member behind each step of the process. So that's why we don't want to expand, because otherwise it will be impossible. We're always running here and there like crazy, so it's really, really enough. And then also, let's say that prices in Barolo are crazy for the land, so it will be really a
I can only
tremendous
imagine.
investment. So for now, it's pretty much enough.
So what,
Yes.
Burgundy real estate, but not Burgundy bottle prices?
Yes, exactly. Very true. And we really strive to,
Which is tough.
you were mentioning about all the differences that we have in our vineyards and the way that we treat our single vineyard Barolos. We really strive for the expression of the vineyard. So that's why also we are spread in 3 different villages In this way, we can really show the unique diversity that we have in Piemonte, because in every single hill, you will always have a different vineyard, a different soil, a different terroir, different exposure, and we want to be able to taste that in the glass. Those are the single vineyards, those are the crus,
Absolutely.
and we try to have pretty much the same method in the cellar, talking about vinification, fermentation, maceration, and also the aging. There's a small variation, as you said, for the size of the barrels, but other than that, everything is the same. In this way, we can really highlight the differences of the terroirs. So that's the beauty that you can taste in our wines.
Absolutely. It's a cliche phrase, but it is the truth. You're tasting terroir when you taste these wines. I had a Bordeaux last night, and it was beautiful, but you could taste the oak. And I think with the San Rocco, it's not apparent. You are tasting the village, the soil, just everything, and it's beautiful with that. And I mean, to build on that, yes, your process is very similar, so that you do see those differences. But I think it's key as well to talk about the integrity behind the process. You have grapes like young Nebbiolo that you turn into your Longue Nebbiolo, but you keep it in stainless steel to really show the fruit. You're not trying to mimic someone else. You're trying to hide it with oak. And that's a beautiful thing, and you let the process do what it does in a wonderful way. So, Ceretta. I wanted to bring up Ceretta. I have to bring up Ceretta. I had the pleasure of tasting that with you in March. And those vines, you waited. You waited to make your single vineyard Ceretta until 2016 is the vintage, correct?
Yes. My father, because actually Ceretta is not a new vineyard for us. We have been working with this vineyard for almost 30 years. And my father has waited for almost 30 years in order to release it as a single vineyard, because he wanted to have older vines. You know, my father is very strict, is such a terrible perfectionist. That's why it's not so easy to work with him, but I manage. He just wants to use older vines for his Barolos. So when he was able to buy this vineyard, back then, along with his father, my grandfather, they decided to replace the entire vineyard. So they decided to replace all the vines, the poles, the wires. It was really a big investment back then. And the vines were too young to be, according to them, to be vinified separately. So they have always been part of our Barolo Classico, which is a mix of 7 different small single vineyards vinified together. This year, with the 2016 vintage, we were like, the vines are almost 30 years old. 2016 is incredible. And also this year is the centenary of our winery, 100 years of history. So we were like, we cannot wait any longer. Let's release it. So finally Ceretta is available, and we are super excited because it's really an incredible result after so much hard work and efforts, and you know, being there, because it's a pretty big vineyard. It's 2.5 hectares. Being there almost every single day, after a while, you really want to have your result in the glass. And being able to vinify it as a single vineyard, finally, we can really taste that. Part of it is always into the Classico, because we didn't want to modify the Classico, so we decided to use just the highest part of Ceretta for the single vineyard. And all the rest always goes into the Classico. So Ceretta is actually a very, very small production. It's a little bit more than 3,000 bottles. Super limited.
Wow. That's, yeah. And it's beautiful. I mean, when we tasted it, it fires on all cylinders. It gives everything that you would expect from Azelia. Oh, lovely. There it is. And with the label change as well.
Yes.
I was laughing, the one bottle I have yet to see, and I know you have, and one day I hope to see it with you. I don't expect to taste it. The 1932. The oldest bottle in your cellar. Yeah, for some reason. It's amazing to think the history behind your domain, to think in 1920 when it all started, it was what Barbera was probably the king of the grapes, and Nebbiolo was a late ripener, so it was tough to fashion. And now at this point, you've become an international winery in that sense, and you're garnering acclaim, and rightfully so. But you have these wines like the Dolcetto, like the Langhe Nebbiolo, that are approachable, that are for everyday drinking. Yet you're still treating them in a wonderful manner. That the Dolcetto, I don't think too many people realize, and I don't see any other wineries doing it. You have a Dolcetto that's single vineyard, that's approachably priced. It's mind blowing, and it shows the quality. And so, another note for people who are watching: organic, correct? You're producing everything organically in the vineyards, so you're not going the easy route either. You're not saying, "Hey, let's spray everything down with a bunch of pesticides and chemicals." The Tignole flies are making their way in, and your father has their little whatever those things you're hanging. I forget what they are, and yeah. And you're taking care for everything, and furthering the land. The land will go to stay for generations after this because of how you're shepherding it, and that's a beautiful thing and a wonderful thing. I did want to ask, or note as well. I had seen the question about Cerretta and the single vineyards, and MGA is a classification that came around in 2010, and I'm sure that will get further delineated. MGA, for people who don't know, and I pardon the butchering of the pronunciation in advance, is Menzione Geografiche Aggiuntive. Yeah.
Well done.
Grazie. But essentially, people are realizing Barolo has these beautiful terroir that are so different, that should be treated as such, but you don't have Grand Cru yet. You don't have Premier Cru like Burgundy would have, and that is being dialed in currently.
So, can't hear you anymore, Hamilton. What happened? Can you hear me? I cannot hear you. There's no sound, Hamilton. I cannot hear you. Let me see. What happened? So William was asking, what's Cerretta? Cerretta is the name of the vineyard. It's a single vineyard in Serralunga d'Alba. So it's a menzione geografica aggiuntiva. Scrolling through to check the questions. Ciao Maria, ciao Manuel, ciao Marcel. There's so many. Ciao Greg. Hamilton is fixing the sound.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Not sure what's happening. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Okay. Perfect. Let me get Lorenzo back. Sorry, guys. Here we are. Deb, I appreciate it. Life does happen.
Okay. There we go.
Better.
Now we can hear you.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. So I was bringing up, unfortunately, COVID-19. I was trying to talk about how when I last saw you, it was at the Grand Portfolio tasting for Skurnik, which was an amazing event, and I was very happy to be a part of it. Love those guys. But we'll ask, and I remember you were struggling to find a way back to Milano because of everything going on. And with that, one of the things to note is you're so spread. You have so many vineyards all over Barolo to be able to get the different terroirs, to be able to capture all of that. How are you making it work? How are you struggling with it? And are you seeing impacts when it comes to vineyard management, maintenance, shipping? I saw you put the botti in your cellars the other day, and I'm sure that was a struggle with everything.
So nature doesn't know about COVID. The vines are very, very healthy. They are vegetating super fast. So we're actually running a lot in the vineyards in these days. It's a joy for us to be out in the vineyards, even if it's hard work, because there's such a message of hope coming from nature, which means everything. Because actually here in Italy, you know, Italy is, we've had a lot of difficulties. It's been really a huge crisis for the entire country, all over the country, especially in the north. But for us, we live in a small town, Castiglione Falletto, which is in the heart of Barolo. We are 700 people. And we're all spread out. So there's vineyards everywhere. There's a lot of vegetation. So we're actually out in nature most of the time. And it's hard for us to really have what's happening in the cities. So we have been extremely lucky. We cannot complain. But of course, it's a huge crisis for the entire country, because all the restaurants are closed. Most businesses have been closed for months. And this is a huge thing. Now things are getting better, slowly, very slowly. So some businesses have reopened already. The good thing is that people are just drinking wine while staying at home during confinement. So, you know, wine
Here's to
can
that.
wine really cheer you up during these difficult days. And we're confident that we will always, you know, during this, when there is such a bad thing, we always come up stronger. And especially for us
Diamonds are
being
made under pressure, right?
exactly, but even more so for us being farmers, winemakers, we work under the sky with Mother Nature.
Yeah.
So Mother Nature really tells us that we cannot stop, because in the vineyards, even in March, when everything started, end of February here in Italy, we couldn't stop working in the vineyards while everybody was at home. We were just working in the vineyards like normal every single day, because you cannot afford to stop. When you're a farmer, the farmers cannot leave their land. So you always have to be
Nature
there.
doesn't wait for you, yeah, and you need to help shepherd that. I think I'd seen a question about Cerretta and specifically the spread of vineyards and producers utilizing these different vineyards, and I think it is key to note. Cerretta, you share with, I mean, who else is in Cerretta? I believe Sylvia,
Cerreta,
correct?
yes, Cerreta is actually one of the biggest single vineyards in Serralunga Alba. And we are in a very good bunch. We're in a very good
Yeah,
bunch. It's pretty spread out. We have 2.5 hectares there, which is a good portion of it. And there's Silvia from Medio Altare. We're very good friends, and so many other producers. We're pretty much in the middle of the
okay. And do you
yeah.
need to talk to them and communicate with them about utilizing the vineyard? Hey, I will be in the vineyard pruning or, taking leaves away and things of that nature. And also, sorry, more questions. it is, William, it is common to have vineyards that are separated in Barolo. There's a lot of producers, correct, Lorenzo? So there's lots of vineyards that are and lots of hills. And these hills
Yeah.
have great features to them. So once you become a producer that's established, being able to find those terroir, it is relatively common. And then Hai was asking about dealing with labor issues with the restrictions of COVID-19, as we were talking about. A great question is that, when you had the delivery of the botti, did you need to call the company and say, hey, we're all wearing masks, or we'll make sure we're not part of the cellar, we'll unlock the door and go have fun and leave the 1932?
So let's say that we have our own workers who live here in Italy. They live here around the winery. So we haven't had any problem in that sense. Of course, everything was
Okay.
delayed. Like, for instance, the delivery of our new botti, our new barrels, was delayed. But other than that,
Okay.
we have our workers who were here. They live here, so that's good. We have some seasonal workers, especially for the harvest, and
I was
for
going to
sure
ask
there's
about harvest.
yeah, for sure there's gonna be it's gonna be an issue for the harvest, not only for us but for most of the wineries in the region, because there's a big uh, demand for workers in September and October when we all pick our grapes.
Hmm.
And some of them are not Italian, some of them are coming from other countries in Europe, and they are stuck at home. They cannot uh, come to Italy. So
Yeah.
we will see. It's true that we still have a few months before the harvest, so we'll see what's going to happen. But right
Hmm.
now, some of the those workers working, for instance, for cooperatives, they're stuck at home and they cannot come to Italy. So that is a problem
So
for
are you
some of them.
thinking about mechanical harvesters? I mean, you have such integrity. I couldn't imagine you mechanically harvesting.
First of
And
all,
if you
because
need hands, maybe myself and my sons will come help out. But
just come. We always need more workers during the harvest, so just come. No,
okay.
our hills are too steep, so it will be impossible to use machines to pick our grapes. And then also because we want to hand select each single cluster. So even if we could, we wouldn't use those machines because it's
Yeah,
impossible to select clusters. So we do a selection
absolutely.
twice. The first selection is in the vineyards. One by one, we select all the clusters by hand before placing them in these little baskets. And then we have a selection table at the
A
winery.
sorting table.
So it's very strict. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what makes your wine so amazing. I see another question, and of course I have a million, but I'm gonna go with the audience on this one.
We're just
About
adding your
produce.
question.
Yeah, about producers, and essentially, when it comes to producers in Barolo, you do all seem like a family. Um, I think of your relationship with Sylvia. You guys are close friends. I think about your relationship with some of the other winemakers. And for everyone out there, I always joke with Lorenzo whenever I talk to him, and I'm waiting and waiting. I would love to see a collaboration. I'll let the cat out of the bag on this one. Sylvia Altare and Lorenzo Scavino Charetta collaboration. I don't know whose grapes they're using or who's making the wine, but it is a family there, correct?
I don't know if Sylvia is here, but just ask her. I'm more than happy. I told her.
She
Yeah, no,
doesn't know me. I won't push too much, but that would be really neat.
no, it's funny because most of
Um,
the single vineyards in Barolo are shared. Because the entire region is very, very small, and all the menzioni geografiche aggiuntive, most of them are shared. So, for instance, in Cerreto, you have many different producers, which work in the same place, of course, but everyone in a different method with different thinking and philosophies. And it's very interesting when you're able to taste the same single vineyard coming from different producers. You can really taste the different terroir, but at the same time, the different hands of all the producers. That's also the
Absolutely. I
uniqueness that
think
we have in Barolo.
and that's the key. I think if anyone has a takeaway from this, it's find your producer. And once you do, you'll realize it unlocks the keys to all of these vineyards. There's so many people making wine, and only a very small handful like yourself that truly deserve the respect and the time and the attention from the masses. It's humbling to see what you're able to pull out. I see another question. Oh, if there was a different parcel that you could work with. We know you have a lot, and I know that you said you're not expanding, but if you could get your
I
hands
like your
on some,
questions. Some say hi.
he's awesome. He is an advanced somm here in Philadelphia, someone who I consider a mentor. So he, I'm sure, has more questions than I do.
And as you said, for sure, it's going to be more some extra gym time during the harvest this year, for sure. Because with the lack of some workers, we're going to be running like crazy, especially my father and I. So some extra work for sure.
Yeah.
If I had, if I had the opportunity to put my hands on another single vineyard in Barolo, that's a tough question because we have close to 200 single vineyards in Barolo. So there's plenty of choice. I think everybody would say Canubi, just because, not because it's the most, I mean, for me, not because it's the most famous single vineyard in Barolo, but probably because that is where the history of Barolo started. So
the oldest Barolo bottle was labeled Canubi, correct? That was the original name for Barolo, was Canubi in the 1700s, if I recall, is the last living bottle. And I don't know if I can get you on record saying it or not, but when you think about Canubi, there's such a dispute over who should label Canubi and where the actual vineyard borders are. But that would be the vineyard, and why?
Probably that would be the vineyard, because there are a lot of producers in Canubi, and I think I would like to compare our style, the style of our winery.
To get back to the wine and the winemaking, I am very, very curious. You have, in terms of corks, I remember you were talking, your wines are age-worthy, of course. And I remember the discussion that you have, what, 4 or 5 different sources of corks that you use? And I also have noticed that your capsules are much, 5 or 6, and your capsules are much longer than others. Is that tell me why, and a little more.
So the selection of the corks is really, really essential for sure, especially for age-worthy wines like Barolo. Barolo is a wine which you can keep almost forever, so you need something which is really able to last forever. And the natural cork is very fundamental because it allows the wine to breathe a little bit. So we've always been working with natural cork. We're very satisfied. Especially now that the cork suppliers have a lot of different techniques to select the corks. We've been experimenting a lot with new corks. We're using now, especially with base wines, so Dolcetto, Nebbiolo, and Barbera d'Alba, a new kind of cork which is 100% recyclable, and it's made 100% from sugar cane. It is very interesting. We've been experimenting a lot, and we're pretty satisfied. We're waiting for Barolo because you're never sure what's going to happen in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. So you always have to be careful. But yes, we're always working with different suppliers, always trying new things, and you always have to go slowly, especially with Barolo.
And I've realized that you have both Diem, the composite corks, as well as natural cork.
Yes.
Do you pick different corks for different age-worthy wines? Like San Rocco is always going to be, or Ceretta will always be, or is it, here's our 2016 Ceretta and here are 6 different cork variations?
So we always try to divide all our cork suppliers for all our wines. This means that, for instance, Barolo Cerretta has 5 or 6 different types of cork.
Okay.
In this way, we can decrease the percentage of cork bottles because, of course, if you buy all your corks from just one supplier, and if that lot is bad, then you're gonna have problems. It's a lot of work because during the bottling, you have to stop the machine a few times. You have to change the corks. You have to reset the machine because each supplier has different measurements. So it's really time consuming, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Just like everything that you guys do, you don't take any shortcuts, so no surprises there. And it's neat to see that you're taking those sorts of precautions for the future. I will ask uh, another question. In terms of maceration, in terms of winemaking, there's always that discussion, modern versus traditional Barolo, and you are divided in terms of, I wouldn't say divided, you're very precise about what you do, but how would you consider yourselves? Your macerations are amazing. 40 to 65 days, if I recall, for your Baroli. Yet at the same token, you do utilize a little bit of roto fermenter to have a more gentle extraction, correct?
So the style of our winery has always been very traditional through 5 generations. So since 1920, the style has always been pretty much the same. Of course, with always the introduction of new techniques, new experiments, but always with an eye to tradition. So talking about Barolo, we use the standard vertical tanks and for the maceration, for the vinification. And we have a pretty long maceration, as you said. For the single vineyards, we're about 55 to 60 days on the skins. And that's a very long time.
Yes.
My great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather used to macerate his Barolos for 60 days on the skins. So
Wow.
it's been like that. While for the base wines, so Dolcetto, Nebbiolo, and Barbera, we use broader fermenters in a very gentle, delicate way. And it's a shorter fermentation, so it's about 10 to 12 days, depending on the vintage, in order to keep the freshness. Okay. For the Barolos, we extend the maceration time always to have more extraction. And also, and it's a very gentle extraction because we never crush the skins too much.
Okay.
We just
so no pigeage or pump overs. What do you generally use?
We just do pump overs in order to make sure that the cap at the top is always humid. You don't want the skins to dry too much. And when the alcoholic fermentation is over, we just close the vat. Well, before that, we make sure that the skins are in contact to the wine. We use a sort of a stainless steel grate, which pushes the cap down. We close the vat and we leave it there for about 60 days, depending on the vintage.
And just let the yeast do what they do, which is wonderful. And do you worry about stuck fermentations? Do you just let it be, correct? Let nature take its course?
Yes, usually when we do that, it's called cappello sommerso, submerged cap. When we do that, the alcoholic fermentation is already over. So the wine is almost 100% dry.
Okay.
Sugar dry. Normally, because we use temperature control vats, if you work carefully during the fermentation time, the fermentation never stops. Especially if you have a very healthy grapes, because we never add yeast. So the fermentation is carried out by the natural yeast, the wild yeast, which live on the skins. So if you have very healthy skins, as a consequence, the yeast will be very healthy and very alive, so they'll be able to continue the fermentation until the end.
Absolutely. And to note for people out there who aren't big into yeast like I am, who aren't cork dorks, if you will, the yeast itself, they're almost like the teachers. The grapes have the potential, and without the yeast, that potential can't be unlocked. So to be able to have these natural yeast is not only another layer of terroir, but on top of that, they add so much complexity, and these wines are so approachable because of that, despite having the power to age for 1932. I mean, I'm still waiting to taste that wine. I'm kidding. In your eyes, what's the perfect drinking window? I had seen something about hi, I like it. I had seen something about what's the drinking window that you would recommend, and I know you and I have chatted about younger wines being enjoyable.
I
Where do
am
you
a
like your
huge
wine?
supporter. I am a huge supporter of the young vintages, just because I love the freshness. When you have very ripe um, raw material, so grapes, then you will have ripe tannins in the bottle right from the beginning. So from the release, you will be able to enjoy the Barolos. Of course, Barolo is an age-worthy wine; you can keep it forever. But if you work with very healthy and ripe grapes, then you will have the balance and the elegance, which are also fundamental in a Barolo. So that's why I love to enjoy the young vintages. Your sound is off again. Cannot hear you. Ciao, Mariel. How are you? Some technical.
What's up, Nick? Hey, thank you guys for coming back. Can you hear me now? All right. Third time's the charm. Yeah, I hope so. Let's see. Inviting Lorenzo. Sounds back? Good. Good. All clear. I'm not touching anything. Don't worry. I'll just pronounce a bunch of Italian words horribly. Don't worry, Maria. Good. All right, last
Go.
time. I'm sorry, Lorenzo. Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess you're doing it on purpose because the limit is 1 hour. And
Ah,
by doing this,
you're on to me. You figured it out. Don't worry.
you've studied everything.
I'm not slick enough for you. But where
Ciao,
I
wine
cut out,
brothers.
I couldn't hear you talking about off vintages. That's where you would cut out for me.
I was talking about actually young vintages.
Okay.
So I was saying that I'm a huge supporter of young vintages. I love to drink Barolos when they are young because of their freshness. And there's special fruitiness in a young Barolo that I don't want to miss. I probably like the 10-year range. Then, for sure, when I have the opportunity to taste an older Barolo, even more so if it's coming from my family, because I can taste what my grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfathers did. So it's a fantastic tasting and enjoyment because you can really realize how the labor of men can really express all the efforts which were made even in the past in the vineyards. So that's a beauty for sure. But for an everyday enjoyment, I love young villages. So I'm drinking right now the 16 Barolos. I have in my glass the Brico Fiasco 15.
Lovely.
So yeah, that's what we're drinking at home.
Awesome. And last question, and then we can call it. Thank you for all the time. So in terms of global warming and climate change and all of that, I know you and I have chatted about this, but you've mentioned that you feel somewhat sheltered from that, despite, I forget the Italian phrasing, but the Diablo, the summer of the devil that you had in 2017 because it was so warm, or at least that was the phrase.
I think it was called Diablo.
Diablo, okay.
So.
Diablo, sorry. Is that something you worry about? And is that something that you're combating in a certain way?
As you mentioned, we are pretty lucky because we are protected. But although the entire Lange region, it's pretty much a bubble because we are protected on both sides. From one side, we have the Alps, the mountains, and the other side, we have the ocean, the Mar Mediterraneo. So it's pretty protected. Of course, we have been having a few effects due to the global warming, but still, compared to other regions, we cannot really complain. I can say global warming is not just about warm weather. It's a lot more than that. For instance, it's about having the rain later in the year. Usually in the past, we had rainstorms mostly in the springtime, early spring. Now we have a lot of rain even in the summer, it was pretty uncommon in the past. And global warming is also about more extreme situations, like water bombs, hailstorms, which are pretty. In the past, they had hailstorms not every year. Now we're having hailstorm every year.
And they're devastating the vineyards, correct?
Yes, they are pretty.
So you have hail cannons? Like, how would you combat the hail?
So we don't have cannons in Barolo. They have cannons in Barbaresco and in Roero. It's a decision made by the government, so the municipality. These cannons are used they say that they break down the clouds, so they avoid the hail formation. Here in Barolo, we don't have them. Some producers use nets, we don't. My father just prefers to risk a little bit more. The good thing is that hailstorms are always very localized. So for us, having vineyards in different villages, we can always spread the risk.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned the later rains in the summer. It's key. I mean, you think about rain in the spring, you have buds, so you don't have to worry about it. But when you have rain in the summer, you already have the grapes hanging. You're about to approach veraison, or you're going through veraison, and that affects 100% the ratio of sugar and juice and everything in the grapes. So that's difficult. But at the same token, you're not planning Alicante Boucher yet, correct? You're not getting ready for Malbec season in Barolo.
And also the canopy management is very essential, especially if you have a lot of rain in the summer. You have to avoid the humidity in between the leaves, because this humidity would cause a lot of diseases like powdery mildew, downy mildew. So you always have to be in the vineyards every single day to work with your leaves and grapes and grain harvest. Even in the summer, it's non-stop.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lorenzo. As always, it's a pleasure to see you. I wish we were actually in person, but for another time.
This is a great way, actually, to get connected. I think one of the effects of all this pandemic, people are closer together, so it's easier to get connected even from far away. So this is a
true.
very positive thing.
I don't have to wait until what, December, when you generally come visit the area
Exactly.
to see you.
Exactly.
So I appreciate it. And I know you're getting requests all the time. So thank you for taking the time with me.
Sure,
But
it's a pleasure. Thank
anyway,
you, Hamilton, for all
I'll
your
let you get back
passion,
to your
which is
day.
always striking, really.
Well, thank you. Grazie mille, amico.
Grazie a
Um,
te. And
we'll
hope to
chat
see
soon.
you either here or there very soon.
Agreed. Agreed. We'll make it happen. Awesome. Well, we'll chat soon. You take care, Lorenzo.
Salute, grazie. Ciao.
Ah, salute. Ciao.